In the heart of a bustling city stood a modest apartment building, which Nate and his 10-year-old son Eric called home. Nestled in a cosy 2-bedroom unit on the 5th floor, their abode was adorned with traces of warmth and love amidst the urban chaos. Nate, a single father with a rugged determination etched into his every move, worked tirelessly at a marketing firm downtown. His days began with the faint glow of dawn peeking through their windows, casting a gentle light on Eric's sleeping form. With a soft smile, Nate would tiptoe around, preparing breakfast before gently waking his son for the day ahead. "Morning, champ," Nate would say, ruffling Eric's unruly bedhead as he stirred awake. "Morning, Dad," Eric would mumble, rubbing his eyes before flashing a sleepy smile. Their mornings were a symphony of hurried movements and shared moments, as Nate juggled making lunches, ensuring Eric's school bag was packed, and stealing a few minutes for breakfast together. "Got everything, kiddo?" Nate would ask, double-checking Eric's backpack. "Yeah, Dad, all set," Eric would reply with a grin, his excitement for the day ahead evident in his eyes. With a quick kiss on Eric's forehead, Nate ushered him out the door, a sense of pride swelling in his chest as he watched his son stride off to school. Once Eric was safely on his way, Nate would embark on his journey, navigating the labyrinth streets to reach his workplace. His office, a sleek skyscraper that pierced the city skyline, was a testament to his dedication and perseverance. "Morning, Nate," his colleagues would greet him with nods and smiles as he settled into his desk. "Morning, everyone," Nate would reply, his voice tinged with a quiet determination. His days at the office were a whirlwind of meetings, presentations, and endless cups of coffee. Yet amidst the chaos, Nate remained steadfast, driven by a single purpose: to provide a better life for Eric. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the city lights began to flicker to life, Nate would finally make his way back home. The familiar sights and sounds of their neighborhood greeted him like an old friend, offering a sense of solace after a long day's work. "Dad, you're home!" Eric would exclaim, rushing to greet him with a hug. "Missed you, buddy," Nate would reply, returning the embrace with a smile. Their evenings were a sanctuary of laughter and shared stories, as Nate and Eric would cook dinner together, recounting the events of their day. With each passing moment, their bond grew stronger, a beacon of love and resilience amidst the chaos of their busy lives. "Hey, Dad, can we play catch tomorrow?" Eric would ask, his eyes alight with excitement. "Sure thing, champ," Nate would reply, tousling Eric's hair affectionately. "But for now, how about we finish up dinner?" And as the evening drew to a close, Nate would tuck Eric into bed, the weight of the world momentarily lifted from his shoulders. "Good night, Dad," Eric would whisper, his voice barely above a murmur. "Good night, son," Nate would reply, pressing a kiss to Eric's forehead before flicking off the lights. As the city outside continued to hum with life, father and son would drift off to sleep, their dreams intertwined like stars in the night sky, a testament to the unbreakable bond between a single father named Nate and his beloved son, Eric. Eric was a bright-eyed boy with a smile that could light up the darkest of rooms. His tousled brown hair fell in unruly waves around his face, framing a pair of sparkling blue eyes that mirrored the boundless curiosity and wonder within his soul. Despite the challenges life had thrown their way, Eric's spirit remained unbroken, a testament to his resilient and joyful nature. His afternoons were a kaleidoscope of activity, as Eric delved into his favourite pastimes with unbridled passion. Whether it was building towering Lego structures that reached for the sky or losing himself in the pages of a beloved book, Eric's days were filled with endless exploration and discovery. Dad, come see what I built, Eric would call, beckoning Nate over to admire his latest creation. Wow, that's incredible, buddy, Nate would reply, his pride evident in every word. In the evenings, Eric's soft nature would shine brightest as he revelled in the simple pleasures of life, whether it was going to the park to play, cuddling up with Nate on the couch to watch a movie, or helping his dad cook dinner in the kitchen. Eric's gentle spirit infused their home with a sense of peace and contentment. Dad, can we make chocolate chip cookies tonight? Eric would ask, his eyes wide with anticipation. Absolutely, champ, Nate would reply, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. But only if you promise to save some for tomorrow. Their evenings would pass in a blur of laughter and shared moments as father and son cherished the precious time they had together. As the night grew late and Eric's eyelids began to droop, Nate would tuck him into bed with a whispered, "I love you," knowing that no matter what the future held, their bond would always remain unbreakable. Once upon a time, Nate, Eric, and Ruth, who is Eric's mother, formed a quaint trio, a picture-perfect family of three nestled in the cosy embrace of their home. Ruth, with her enigmatic charm and eccentricities, brought a unique vibrancy to their lives. Her presence was like a gentle breeze, stirring up laughter and love wherever she went. Despite her peculiarities, Nate adored Ruth with a depth that transcended words. Her whimsical nature and unpredictable quirks only added to the allure of their relationship, weaving a tapestry of memories that painted their family portrait in hues of warmth and affection. Mom, why do you always wear mismatched socks? Eric would ask, his brow furrowed in confusion. Because life's too short for boring socks, my dear, Ruth would reply with a twinkle in her eye, her smile lighting up the room. Nate would watch with fondness as mother and son shared playful banter, his heart swelling with gratitude for the woman who had given him the greatest gift of all, a family to call his own. But beneath Ruth's whimsy lurked shadows of darkness, hidden depths that Nate had never dared to explore. He brushed aside her occasional oddities, convinced that her love for them would shield their family from any harm. Isn't Mum the coolest, Dad? Eric would exclaim, his eyes shining with adoration. Yeah, buddy, she sure is, Nate would reply, his voice tinged with a mixture of pride and apprehension. Nate's love for Ruth was a melody composed of tender notes, each chord resonating with the depth of his affection for her. From the moment they met, there was a magnetic pull between them, drawing Nate into the orbit of Ruth's enigmatic presence. She was a kaleidoscope of contradictions, a whimsical nature dancing in harmony with her unpredictable quirks. Their courtship was a whirlwind of laughter and shared adventures as Ruth led Nate on escapades through hidden alleyways and secret gardens, her laughter ringing like bells in the crisp evening air. Together, they crafted memories that sparkled like jewels in the tapestry of their love, each moment etched into the fabric of their hearts with an indelible permanence. Nate cherished Ruth's peculiarities with an adoration that bordered on reverence. Her penchant for wearing mismatched socks became a symbol of their unconventional bond, a testament to their willingness to embrace life's unexpected twists and turns with open arms. And when Ruth would burst into spontaneous bouts of song and dance in the middle of their living room, Nate would join her without hesitation, his laughter mingling with hers in a symphony of joy. In the heart of their cosy kitchen, Nate stood beside Ruth, a smile playing on his lips as he watched her concoct one of her infamous experimental dishes. Nate, darling, would you mind passing me the paprika? Ruth would ask, her eyes alight with mischief as she sprinkled a pinch of cinnamon into the pot. Paprika? I thought we were making spaghetti sauce, not cinnamon rolls. Nate would reply with a chuckle, handing her the requested spice. Oh, where's the fun fun in sticking to the recipe," Ruth would quip, her laughter echoing through the room as she stirred the bubbling concoction. As they sat down to dinner, Nate would take a hesitant bite of the unconventional dish, his taste buds tingling with a mixture of curiosity and delight. "Well, what do you think?" Ruth would ask, her gaze fixed on Nate with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. "It's different," Nate would reply with a grin, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "But then again, so are you, and I wouldn't have it any other way." Their love was a sanctuary, a refuge from the chaos of the outside world where they could be themselves, without fear of judgment or reproach. And though Ruth's eccentricities sometimes raised eyebrows among their friends and family, Nate remained steadfast in his devotion, his belief in the purity of their connection unwavering. But beneath Ruth's whimsy lay shadows of darkness that Nate dared not explore. He sensed the turmoil brewing beneath the surface, the silent battles she fought against unseen adversaries, yet he chose to shield her from the harsh light of scrutiny, convinced that his love was enough to conquer whatever demons lurked in the depths of her soul. And so, they danced on the precipice of uncertainty, their love a beacon of light in the darkness, illuminating the path ahead with a promise of brighter days to come. For Nate, Ruth was more than just a partner. She was his muse, his confidant, his soulmate, a treasure to be cherished for all eternity. As the years wore on, Nate couldn't ignore the subtle shifts in Ruth's behaviour, the erratic fluctuations that hinted at a deeper turmoil lurking beneath her whimsical facade. Her once vibrant spirit seemed to dim with each passing day like a flickering candle struggling against the encroaching darkness. "Are you all right, Ruth?" Nate would ask, concern etched into the lines of his brow as he watched her stare off into the distance, lost in the labyrinth of her thoughts. "I'm fine, darling," Ruth would reply with a forced smile, though the shadows in her eyes betrayed the truth she dared not speak. Nate would try to shake off the nagging feeling of unease, burying himself in the routine of their daily lives in a desperate attempt to outrun the shadows that loomed ever closer. But no matter how hard he tried to ignore the signs, the whispers of doubt continued to echo in the recesses of his mind, a constant reminder of the fragility of their seemingly perfect world. "Dad, do you think Mum's okay?" Eric would ask one evening, his voice tinged with worry as he caught Nate stealing a furtive glance at Ruth. "I'm sure she's just tired, buddy," Nate would reply with a forced smile, though the weight of his words hung heavy in the air like an unspoken truth. And as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Nate would find himself teetering on the edge of a precipice, his heart torn between the love he felt for Ruth and the fear of what lay hidden beneath her enigmatic facade. But still, he clung to the hope that their love would conquer all, that their family would emerge unscathed from the storm, even as the clouds gathered ominously on the horizon. The day the truth shattered their world dawned like any other, the sun casting its golden rays upon their once serene existence. But beneath the facade of normalcy a storm brewed, its thunderous echoes reverberating through the halls of their home. "Nate, we need to talk." Ruth's voice trembled with an unspoken fear as she beckoned him into the dimly lit living room, her eyes clouded with a weight he had never seen before. "What is it, Ruth?" Nate's heart pounded in his chest as he braced himself for the impending revelation, a sense of foreboding settling over him like a suffocating blanket. I've been keeping something from you, something I never wanted you to know." Ruth's words hung heavy in the air, each syllable laced with a pain that cut deeper than any knife. As the truth spilled forth like poison from her lips, Nate felt the ground beneath him shift, the world as he knew it crumbling into chaos. The echoes of Ruth's confession faded into silence, and Nate found himself standing amidst the wreckage of their shattered dreams, his heart heavy with the weight of betrayal. "Dad, what's happening?" Eric's voice pierced through the suffocating silence, his eyes wide with confusion as he looked to Nate for answers.
It's complicated, Eric."
Nate's voice wavered with emotion as he gathered his son into his arms, holding him close as if to shield him from the storm raging outside.
"But we'll get through this together."
Nate's words were a whispered promise, a beacon of hope amidst the darkness that threatened to consume them whole. As they stood together amidst the wreckage of their shattered dreams, Nate and Eric clung to each other with desperate resolve, determined to rebuild their lives from the ashes and forge a new path forward, guided by love, resilience, and the unwavering belief that together they could weather any storm. The secret that Ruth revealed shattered Nate's world and tore at the very fabric of their family. With tear-filled eyes and a trembling voice, Ruth confessed to Nate that she had been living a double life, concealing a long-term affair that had been eating away at her conscience for years.
I never meant for it to happen, Nate."
Ruth's voice quivered with remorse as she laid bare the truth that had been gnawing at her soul.
"But I couldn't help myself, and now everything's falling apart."
Nate stood frozen, his mind reeling with disbelief as he struggled to comprehend the enormity of Ruth's betrayal. The ground beneath him seemed to shift, the walls closing in around him as the weight of her words bore down upon him like a suffocating weight.
"How long?"
Nate's voice was barely a whisper, his heartache palpable in every syllable.
"Too long."
Ruth's reply was a pained admission, her shoulders slumped with the burden of her guilt.
"I never wanted to hurt you, Nate, but I couldn't bear to keep living a lie."
As the echoes of Ruth's confession faded into a deafening silence, Nate found himself standing amidst the wreckage of their shattered dreams, his heart heavy with the weight of betrayal. The world as he knew it crumbled into chaos, leaving behind nothing but the bitter taste of disillusionment and the haunting spectre of love betrayed. In the aftermath of Ruth's confession, Nate found himself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions, torn between the love he still harboured for her and the deep sense of betrayal that threatened to consume him whole. Their once idyllic family lay in ruins, the shattered fragments of their dreams scattered like ashes upon the wind. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Nate struggled to come to terms with the reality of their situation. Despite his pain and anger, he couldn't bear to see Eric caught in the crossfire of their tumultuous relationship. And so, with a heavy heart and a resolve born of necessity, Nate made the difficult decision to prioritize his son's well-being above all else.
"Eric, I need to talk to you."
Nate's voice was gentle as he sat his son down one evening, his heart heavy with the weight of the conversation that lay ahead. "What's wrong, Dad?" Eric's brow furrowed with concern as he looked up at Nate, his eyes wide with apprehension.
"It's about Mum."
Nate's words hung heavy in the air, each syllable a painful reminder of the rift that had torn their family apart.
"She's going through a difficult time right now, and things are going to be different for a while."
"What do you mean?" Eric's voice trembled with uncertainty as he searched Nate's face for answers.
I mean that Mum and I need some time apart."
Nate's voice wavered with emotion as he struggled to find the right words.
"But no matter what happens, you'll always be my priority, Eric. You'll always have a home with me."
And so, with a heavy heart and a determination born of love, Nate made the difficult decision to file for custody of Eric, ensuring that his son would have a stable and loving environment in which to grow and thrive. Though Ruth fought fiercely to maintain her rights as a mother, Nate remained steadfast in his commitment to Eric's well-being, ultimately reaching a custody agreement that allowed Ruth to have visitation rights on weekends and holidays.
"Mum's going to pick you up on Saturday, okay?"
Nate's voice was gentle as he tucked Eric into bed one evening, his heart aching with the weight of their new reality.
"But I don't want to go." Eric's voice was a whispered plea, his eyes brimming with tears. "I know, buddy."
Nate's words were a whispered promise, a silent vow to always be there for his son no matter what.
"But sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do. Just know that I'll always be here for you, no matter what happens."
As Eric drifted off to sleep, Nate stood watch over him, his heart heavy with the weight of the sacrifices he had made for the sake of his son. But amidst the pain and the uncertainty, one thing remained clear. No matter what the future held, Nate would always be there for Eric, a steady anchor in the turbulent sea of life. Weekends at Ruth's place became a stark contrast to the vibrant and engaging atmosphere Eric was accustomed to at his father's home. Ruth, once the epitome of whimsy and charm, had transformed into a mere shell of her former self. Her once lively demeanour had been replaced by a veil of apathy, and her interactions with Eric had become increasingly distant and perfunctory.
"Mom, can we play a game together?"
Eric would ask, his voice tinged with a hint of longing as he looked up at Ruth with hopeful eyes. "Not now, Eric." Ruth's reply was curt, her gaze distant as she stared off into the void of her thoughts. And so Eric would spend his weekends in solitude, the silence of Ruth's home echoing with the emptiness of her absence. With each passing day, he felt a growing sense of loneliness gnawing at his soul, a longing for the warmth and affection he had once known. But amidst the desolation of Ruth's indifference, there were fleeting moments of respite. When relatives or Nate came to visit, Ruth would don the mask of normacy, her smile forced but her words laced with warmth and familiarity.
"Hey there, champ."
Nate would greet Eric with a smile as he arrived to pick him up on Sunday evening, his heart heavy with the knowledge of the emptiness Eric had endured.
"Hi, Dad."
Eric's voice was a mixture of relief and exhaustion as he hurried to gather his belongings, eager to leave behind the suffocating silence of Ruth's home. As they drove away, leaving behind the facade of normacy that Ruth had erected, Nate would cast a glance back at the house, a pang of sadness tugging at his heart. But amidst the shadows of Ruth's despair, there remained a glimmer of hope, a promise of brighter days ahead for Eric, guided by the unwavering love and support of his father. As they returned to the warmth and familiarity of their own home, Nate vowed to do everything in his power to ensure that Eric never had to endure such loneliness again. One day, as Nate dropped Eric off at Ruth's, they found that the house was locked, her phone unreachable, leaving Nate and Eric reeling in disbelief and confusion. With each passing hour, the sense of unease grew, ignoring fear taking root in the pit of Nate's stomach as he frantically searched for any sign of his estranged wife.
"Eric, stay here."
Nate's voice was strained with worry as he paced back and forth near the gate of her house, his mind racing with a million unanswered questions.
"Dad, what's going on?"
Eric's voice trembled with uncertainty as he watched Nate's frantic movements, a sense of foreboding settling over him like a heavy shroud.
I don't know, son.
Nate's reply was a whispered admission of defeat, his heart heavy with the weight of uncertainty.
But I'm going to find out.
With each passing moment, Nate's desperation grew, his search for Ruth yielding no answers and no solace. Her phone remained unreachable, her whereabouts a mystery that seemed to taunt him at every turn. And then, amidst the silence of the empty house, Nate found a note near the postbox, hastily scribbled on a scrap of paper, and its words a dagger to his heart. "I'm leaving the city," the note read, its message devoid of explanation or remorse. "Don't try to find me." The truth hit Nate like a ton of bricks, the realization sinking in with a sickening finality. Ruth had left him, left them, without so much as a goodbye, her departure shrouded in mystery and betrayal. As rumours began to circulate amongst the neighbours, Nate's worst fears were confirmed. Ruth had been seeing another man, a fact that now seemed glaringly obvious in hindsight. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place, painting a picture of deception and deceit that Nate had been too blind to see. "Dad? Where's Mum?" Eric's voice was small, his eyes brimming with tears as he clung to Nate for comfort.
"I don't know, buddy."
Nate's words were a whispered admission of defeat, his heart breaking for the son he couldn't protect from the pain of betrayal. They stood together amidst the wreckage of their shattered dreams, and Nate vowed to pick up the pieces and move forward, guided by the unwavering love and support of his son. For though Ruth's departure had left them broken and bruised, Nate knew that together they would find the strength to heal and rebuild their lives anew. As time passed, Eric found himself grappling with conflicting emotions, his heart torn between the lingering affection he harboured for his mother and the bitter sting of betrayal that still lingered in his soul. There were moments when memories of Ruth would sneak up on him, a fleeting whisper of longing that tugged at his heartstrings with a gentle yet persistent force. "Dad, do you ever miss Mum?" Eric's voice was tinged with a hint of sadness as he broached the topic that had been weighing on his mind.
"Yeah, buddy, I do."
Nate's reply was measured, his gaze distant as he wrestled with his own conflicting emotions.
"But sometimes people make choices that hurt the ones they love, and we have to find a way to move forward."
"I guess you're right." Eric's voice was quiet, his eyes clouded with a mixture of longing and resignation. "It's hard, to let go of the memories we had."
"I know, son."
Nate's voice was gentle as he reached out to squeeze Eric's shoulder, offering silent reassurance.
"But we have each other, and that's what's important. We'll make new memories together, ones that are filled with love and happiness."
And so with each passing day, Eric made a conscious effort to let go of the lingering shadows of his mother's absence, to focus instead on the love and support that surrounded him in the form of his father and the life they had built together. Though the ache of her betrayal still lingered, he refused to let it define him, choosing instead to embrace the warmth and stability of the present moment. "Dad, I'm glad we have each other." Eric's words were a whispered affirmation of their unbreakable bond, his heart overflowing with gratitude for the strength and resilience they had found in each other's embrace.
"Me too, buddy."
Nate's voice was filled with love as he pulled Eric into a tight embrace, his heart swelling with pride for the remarkable young man his son had become. And as they stood together, father and son, amidst the ebb and flow of life's ever-changing tide, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united by a bond that transcended time and space, a bond forged in the crucible of adversity and tempered by the fires of love. In the wake of Ruth's departure and the tumultuous aftermath that followed, Nate found himself at a crossroads, faced with the daunting task of rebuilding his shattered life from the ground up. Yet amidst the wreckage of his broken dreams, he discovered a newfound sense of purpose and a fierce determination to provide a better future for his son, Eric. With unwavering resolve, Nate threw himself into his work, channeling his grief and frustration into the relentless pursuit of success. Long hours at the office became the norm, as he pored over spreadsheets and presentations with a singular focus, his mind consumed by thoughts of Eric and the life he hoped to build for him. "Dad, are you sure you have to work so late?" Eric's voice was tinged with concern as Nate returned home well past dinner time one evening, his exhaustion evident in the weary lines etched upon his face.
"I'm sorry, buddy."
Nate's reply was laced with regret as he knelt to Eric's level, his heart heavy with the weight of his absence.
"I promise I'm doing it all for you."
And so, fueled by a potent mix of love and determination, Nate persevered, climbing the corporate ladder with a tenacity that bordered on obsession. Each promotion brought with it a renewed sense of hope, a glimmer of light amidst the darkness that had threatened to consume him. "Dad, I'm proud of you." Eric's words were a whispered affirmation of their unbreakable bond, his eyes shining with admiration as he watched Nate accept yet another accolade at the company's annual awards ceremony.
"Thanks, buddy."
Nate's voice was filled with gratitude as he wrapped Eric in a tight embrace, his heart overflowing with pride for the remarkable young man his son had become. More than a year had passed since Ruth's abrupt departure, and though the wounds were still raw, Nate and Eric had begun to find solace in the rhythm of their new life. Their once shattered world had slowly begun to knit itself back together, each day a testament to their resilience and unwavering bond. "Dad, can we go fishing this weekend?" Eric's voice was filled with excitement as he bounded into the kitchen, his eyes shining with anticipation.
"You bet, buddy."
Nate's reply was accompanied by a warm smile, his heart swelling with gratitude for the simple joys they had rediscovered together. Their weekends became a sanctuary of shared adventures and laughter as Nate and Eric explored the world around them with a newfound sense of wonder and appreciation. Whether it was casting their lines into the tranquil waters of a nearby lake, or hiking through the rugged trails of the countryside, their bond grew stronger with each passing moment. "Dad, thanks for taking me fishing," Eric would say, his words laced with gratitude as they sat side by side watching the sun dip below the horizon.
"Anytime, son."
Nate's voice was filled with love as he tousled Eric's hair affectionately, his heart overflowing with pride for the remarkable young man his son was becoming. And as they sat together beneath the starlit sky, father and son would share their hopes and dreams, their fears and aspirations, knowing that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, hand in hand, guided by the unbreakable bond of family. Years passed by, and Nate found solace in the knowledge that despite the trials and tribulations they had endured, they had emerged stronger and more resilient than ever before. For no matter what obstacles lay ahead, Nate knew that, with Eric by his side, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. Eric remained a beacon of light in Nate's life, his infectious laughter and boundless enthusiasm serving as a constant reminder of the joys that still existed amidst the chaos. Each day, as Nate returned home from work, weary and worn from the rigours of the day, Eric greeted him with a smile that could brighten even the darkest of days.
Dad, you won't believe what happened at school today.
Eric's voice was filled with excitement as he regaled Nate with tales of his latest adventures, his eyes shining with the thrill of discovery.
What happened, buddy?
Nate's voice was tinged with amusement as he listened to Eric's animated retelling of the day's events, his heart swelling with pride for the remarkable young man his son had become. From impromptu science experiments gone awry to daring playground escapades, Eric's stories never failed to bring a smile to Nate's face, a brief respite from the stresses of the outside world. They sat together at the dinner table, sharing laughs and making memories, and Nate found solace in the simple joys of fatherhood, knowing that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would always have Eric by his side, a constant source of love and light in his life. As Nate stepped through the threshold of their home one day, weary from the day's toil, he noticed a palpable shift in the atmosphere. Eric, usually in the embodiment of boundless energy and infectious joy, sat hunched over at the kitchen table, his usual vibrancy replaced by a somber silence.
Hey, buddy, is everything all right?
Nate's voice was laced with concern as he approached. Eric, a furrow forming between his brows.
Yeah, Dad, I'm fine.
Eric's reply came too quickly, too rehearsed, his eyes avoiding Nate's gaze as he feigned a smile. Nate's heart clenched at the sight of his son's obvious distress, ignoring worry settling in the pit of his stomach. He knew Eric well enough to sense when something was amiss, and this facade of false cheer only served to deepen his concern.
Eric, I know when something's bothering you.
Nate's voice was gentle but firm as he placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his heart aching with the need to ease Eric's pain.
It's nothing, really.
Eric's words were barely a whisper, his shoulders slumping with the weight of his unspoken burdens. Nate struggled to contain his frustration, his mind racing with a million unanswered questions. What could be troubling Eric so deeply? Had something happened at school? Was it something he had said or done?
Listen, Eric, I'm here for you, okay?
Nate's voice was filled with a quiet resolve as he pulled Eric into a reassuring embrace, his heart aching with the need to protect his son from whatever demons haunted his thoughts. Despite the nagging sense of unease that lingered in the back of his mind, Nate chose to trust Eric's reassurances and carried on with his work, hoping that whatever had troubled his son would pass with time. And as the evening wore on, he focused his energies on household chores and dinner preparations, the rhythm of their familiar routines providing a comforting anchor amidst the uncertainty. Throughout the evening, Nate stole glances at Eric, noting the lingering shadows beneath his son's eyes and the faint traces of a forced smile. Yet each time he broached the subject, Eric brushed off his concerns with a dismissive wave, insisting that he was fine. Resigned to the fact that perhaps Eric truly had just experienced a rough day, Nate chose to let the matter rest for the time being. After all, he reasoned, tomorrow was a new day, filled with the promise of fresh opportunities and brighter horizons. As they stood together in the embrace of their shared silence, Nate vowed to do whatever it took to uncover the truth behind Eric's sadness, to reassure him that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, father and son, united in love and unwavering support. The days that followed brought with them a palpable shift in Eric's demeanour, a subtle but unmistakable change that did not escape Nate's notice. Gone were the infectious laughter and boundless enthusiasm that had once defined his son, replaced instead by a tense and guarded demeanour that left Nate feeling increasingly unsettled.
Hey, Eric, is everything okay?
Nate's voice was gentle but tinged with concern, as he observed his son's distant gaze and furrowed brow. Yeah, Dad. Everything's fine. Eric's reply came too quickly, too rehearsed, his eyes avoiding Nate's probing gaze as he attempted to force a smile. Nate's heart sank at the sight of Eric's obvious distress, at not forming in the pit of his stomach as he struggled to comprehend the source of his son's unease. He knew Eric well enough to sense when something was amiss, and this sudden behaviour change spoke volumes.
Eric, please talk to me.
Nate's voice was pleading as he reached out to his son, a desperate need to break through the walls of silence that had sprung up between them.
It's nothing, Dad.
Eric's voice wavered with emotion, his facade of false bravado crumbling before Nate's unwavering gaze.
I'm sorry.
Nate's heart ached at the admission, a flood of conflicting emotions washing over him as he grappled with the realization that his son was hurting, and he didn't know why. He longed to wrap Eric in a comforting embrace, to reassure him that whatever burdens he carried, that he would face them together. But the distance between them felt insurmountable, a gaping chasm that seemed to widen with each passing moment. Eric seemed weighed down by a burden he refused to share. Nate's attempts to coax him into opening up were met with stubborn resistance, each inquiry met with a dismissive wave and a forced smile.
Eric, are you sure everything's okay?
Nate's voice was laced with worry as he watched his son retreat further into himself, his heart aching with the need to ease Eric's pain.
Yeah, Dad, I told you, I'm fine.
Eric's reply was curt, his eyes avoiding Nate's gaze as he busied himself with mundane tasks, a tangible tension hanging in the air between them.
Eric, please.
Nate's voice was barely a whisper, his frustration and helplessness threatening to overwhelm him.
I'm here for you, no matter what. You don't have to face this alone. You don't have to carry this burden alone.
Nate's voice was gentle but firm as he reached out to his son, his heart breaking at the sight of Eric's obvious distress.
Whatever it is, we'll face it together, okay?
But Eric remained resolute in his silence, his walls fortified against Nate's attempts to breach them. No amount of pleading or cajoling could persuade him to share the truth of his troubles, leaving Nate feeling helpless and lost in the face of his son's pain. The silence stretched on, and Nate knew that the road ahead would not be easy. Whatever demons haunted Eric's thoughts, they had built a fortress around his heart, one that Nate feared he may never breach. Nate vowed to do whatever it took to break through the walls that divided them, to reclaim the bond they had once shared, stronger and more resilient than ever before. As Nate struggled to decipher the mystery shrouding Eric's behavior, his mind became a battleground of conflicting thoughts and fears. With each passing day of Eric's unrelenting silence, Nate found himself grasping at straws, desperately searching for answers to the questions that haunted him. The possibility of Eric being bullied at school loomed large in Nate's mind, a chilling spectre that filled him with a righteous fury. He imagined his son's torment at the hands of cruel classmates, the echoes of their taunts ringing in his ears like a relentless barrage of arrows. The mere thought of Eric's suffering in silence, too ashamed or afraid to seek help, ignited a fire within Nate's heart, driving him to protect his son at all costs. But alongside his fears of external threats lurked the nagging suspicion that perhaps Eric's troubles ran deeper than mere schoolyard skirmishes. Nate couldn't shake the gnawing doubt that something he had said or done, or failed to do, had caused Eric's distress. Had he been too preoccupied with work? Neglecting his duties as a father? Had he unwittingly dismissed Eric's concerns, brushing them aside in favour of his agenda? The weight of these questions bore down on Nate like a heavy burden, casting shadows of doubt upon his every action. And yet, amidst the tumult of his racing thoughts, Nate clung to a flicker of hope, a belief that no matter the source of Eric's pain, they would face it together, father and son, united in their unwavering bond. Feeling a sense of desperation gnawing at his core, Nate made a decision that weighed heavily on his conscience. With a heavy heart and a trembling hand, he carefully concealed a small camera within one of Eric's toys, hoping against hope that it would provide some insight into the mystery that had consumed his son's spirit. As Nate watched the footage, a whirlwind of emotion swept through him, each frame a window into Eric's world that he had never seen before. His heart clenched with a mixture of guilt and apprehension, knowing that he had crossed a line in his desperate quest for answers. Nate couldn't shake the feeling of guilt that washed over him like a tidal wave. The thought of invading his son's privacy in such a manner filled him with a deep sense of shame, yet the need to uncover the truth outweighed his moral qualms.
"I'm sorry, Eric,"
Nate whispered to himself, his voice barely audible above the hum of the surveillance equipment.
I never wanted it to come to this.
Yet, as he continued to watch, Nate couldn't tear his eyes away from the screen, his breath catching in his throat with each new revelation. The sight of Eric's solemn expression, the weight of his unseen burdens etched upon his young face, tore at Nate's heartstrings like a dagger to the soul. With bated breath, Nate monitored the footage captured by the hidden camera, his heart pounding in his chest as he searched for any sign of the torment that had plagued Eric for so long. Each passing moment felt like an eternity, each flicker of movement on the screen a potential clue in the labyrinth of Eric's troubled mind.
"I just want to help you, son,"
Nate murmured, his words tinged with a profound sense of helplessness.
"I'll do whatever it takes to make things right."
With each passing moment, Nate's resolve grew stronger, fueled by the unwavering determination to uncover the truth and ease Eric's pain. Though he knew he had overstepped his bounds, he couldn't shake the sense of urgency that pulsed through his veins like a drumbeat, driving him ever onward in his quest for redemption. And as the hours stretched into the night, Nate remained steadfast in his vigil, his eyes glued to the screen as he waited for the moment when all would be revealed, when the shadows that haunted Eric's soul would be banished once and for all. As Nate's eyes scanned the grainy footage, a sense of foreboding washed over him like a dark cloud looming on the horizon. Amidst the familiar scenes of Eric's daily life, something was unsettling about the figure lurking in the shadows, a presence that sent shivers down Nate's spine. With a trembling hand, Nate rewound the footage, his heart pounding in his chest as he scrutinized each frame with increasing intensity. There, in the periphery of the screen, he caught sight of the ominous figure, a shadowy silhouette that seemed to hover on the edges of Eric's world. His breath caught in his throat as he watched the stranger's interactions with Eric, a knot of dread forming in the pit of his stomach. There was something about the way they moved, the way they seemed to hover just out of sight, that set Nate's instincts on edge. Who was this person, and what were they doing in Eric's life? The questions swelled in Nate's mind like a tempest, his thoughts racing to make sense of the unsettling scene unfolding before him. As he continued to watch, Nate's fear gave way to a fierce determination to protect his son at all costs. Whatever danger lurked in the shadows, Nate vowed to confront it head-on, to ensure that Eric remained safe and secure in the warmth of his love and protection. But as Nate delved deeper into the footage, his worst fears were realized. The stranger wasn't a bully or a threat from outside their home. It was Ruth, Eric's mother, returning unexpectedly after months of silence and abandonment. A maelstrom of emotions churned within Nate as he watched Ruth's interactions with Eric, her distant demeanour and lack of concern for their son's well-being sending waves of anger and betrayal crashing over him like a tidal wave. How could she return after all this time, only to further traumatize their son with her careless indifference? As Nate watched the footage, a sense of disbelief and betrayal washed over him like a tidal wave, threatening to drown him in a sea of emotions. The sight of Ruth, Eric's mother, returning unexpectedly after months of silence and abandonment, sent shockwaves through Nate's core. With each passing moment captured on the screen, Nate's anger simmered beneath the surface, a fiery inferno fueled by the depths of his betrayal. How could Ruth abandon Eric and him, only to return as if nothing had happened? The wounds of her betrayal still raw, Nate struggled to contain the flood of emotions threatening to consume him. As he watched Ruth's interactions with Eric, her distant demeanour and lack of concern for their son's well-being, Nate's heart broke for Eric all over again. It was clear that Ruth's return had only added to Eric's pain, exacerbating the wounds that had yet to heal. Nate could see through the facade, the carefully constructed lies woven into Ruth's words like threads in a web of deceit. He watched with a heavy heart as Ruth attempted to manipulate Eric's emotions, twisting the knife of betrayal deeper with each false promise and empty gesture. As the footage played on, Nate's anger smouldered beneath the surface, a simmering rage fueled by the depths of Ruth's betrayal. How dare she prey upon Eric's innocence, using him as a pawn in her twisted game of manipulation and deceit? With each passing moment, Nate's resolve hardened, his determination to protect Eric from Ruth's toxic influence burning brighter than ever before. He knew that he had to confront Ruth, to put an end to her charade once and for all, before she could inflict any more harm upon their fragile family. Yet, amidst the storm of his emotions, Nate knew that he couldn't confront Ruth without revealing the truth of his intrusion into Eric's privacy. With a heavy heart, he resolved to confront her in person, to demand answers for her sudden reappearance and the pain she had inflicted upon their family. But as he prepared to confront Ruth, Nate couldn't shake the sinking feeling that their journey was far from over, that the truth they sought lay buried beneath layers of deception and betrayal, waiting to be uncovered in the shadows of their fractured family. When Eric encountered his mother after months of absence, a whirlwind of emotion swept through him like a tempest, leaving him reeling in confusion and uncertainty. As Ruth approached him with outstretched arms and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, Eric's heart fluttered with a mixture of longing and apprehension. His fingers trembled with the urge to reach out and embrace her, to bask in the warmth of her familiar presence once more. But beneath the surface of his longing lay a seed of suspicion, a nagging doubt that whispered of betrayal and deceit. "Mom?" Eric's voice wavered as he stared into Ruth's eyes, searching for the truth hidden within their depths. "Where have you been? Why did you leave?" Ruth's response was evasive, her words carefully crafted to deflect Eric's questions and soothe his fears. But try as she might to cloak her intentions in a veneer of maternal affection, Eric couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, that his mother's sudden reappearance was not all that it seemed. Ruth had been secretly meeting with Eric during his moments of play, their interactions veiled in the shadows of deception and betrayal. Her approach was calculated towards Eric, her demeanour a mask of false sympathy and contrived concern. She spoke to him in hushed tones, her words laced with feigned affection, as she attempted to manipulate Eric's emotions to gain his sympathy. During their secret meetings, Ruth's manipulation of Eric was subtle, yet insidious, her words carefully crafted to prey upon his innocence and vulnerability. With a deceptive smile and a tone dripping with false sincerity, she sought to elicit sympathy from her son, weaving a web of deceit around him, like a spider spinning its web.
"Eric, sweetheart, I've missed you so much," Ruth would coo, her voice honeyed with feigned affection as she reached out to stroke his hair. "I'm sorry I had to leave you. But you know Mummy loves you, right?"
Her words were like a siren's song, luring Eric into a false sense of security as he nodded eagerly, desperate to believe that his mother's love was genuine. But beneath the surface of his longing lay a seed of suspicion, a nagging doubt that whispered of betrayal and deceit. Eric, unaware of the depths of his mother's deception, nodded eagerly, his eyes bright with the hope of reconciliation.
"I've missed you too, Mum,"
he replied, his voice tinged with longing as he reached out to embrace her. But Ruth's manipulative tactics didn't end there. Sensing Eric's uncertainty, she would lean in close, her eyes shining with false sincerity as she whispered in his ear, her words a poisonous concoction of lies and deception. "Eric, darling, you mustn't tell your father about our meetings," Ruth would murmur, her voice low and urgent. "He wouldn't understand, and he might try to keep us apart. You wouldn't want that, would you?" Eric's heart would sink at her words, torn between his loyalty to his father and his desire to please his mother. As the moments passed and Ruth's presence lingered, Eric's emotions churned within him like a storm-tossed sea. He yearned for the comfort of her embrace, yet he couldn't shake the sense of betrayal that gnawed at his soul. Caught between love and suspicion, Eric grappled with conflicting emotions, his heart torn between the longing for the mother he once knew and the fear of the stranger she had become. And as he looked into Ruth's eyes, he couldn't help but wonder, could he ever truly trust her again? Ruth's sudden return sent shockwaves through the fragile equilibrium of Nate and Eric's lives, leaving them both reeling in their wake. For more than a year, she had been a ghost, her absence a gaping wound in their family that refused to heal, and now with no warning or explanation she had returned, her motives shrouded in secrecy and suspicion. As Ruth attempted to reinsert herself into Eric's life, with a veneer of maternal affection, Nate couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. What had prompted her sudden return after months of silence? And why did she now seek to mend things with Eric after abandoning him without so much as a goodbye? The answers remained elusive. Hidden behind the mask of Ruth's carefully constructed facade, yet Nate couldn't shake the feeling that her intentions were far from altruistic. There was a darker purpose lurking beneath the surface of her sudden reappearance. Was it guilt that drove Ruth back into their lives? A belated attempt to atone for the pain she had inflicted upon her family? Or was there a more sinister motive at play, a hidden agenda concealed behind her facade of maternal concern? As Nate grappled with these unanswered questions, a sense of unease settled over him like a shadow, casting doubt upon the sincerity of Ruth's intentions. He couldn't help but wonder, what did she hope to gain from her sudden return, and at what cost to their fragile family? Now that Nate was aware of the situation, he decided to confront Ruth. One day, he discreetly waited for her at the familiar meeting spot where Eric and she usually met. However, this time Eric was at home, diligently working on his homework. As Nate waited behind the slide of the park, his heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and determination, Ruth's footsteps echoed in the distance, drawing closer with each passing moment. And when she finally emerged, her eyes widened in shock at the sight of Nate standing before her, his expression a mask of steely resolve. "Nate, oh, what are you doing here?" Ruth's voice trembled with a mixture of surprise and fear, her gaze darting nervously from side to side as she took in her surroundings. But Nate remained steadfast, his jaw set in determination as he stepped forward to confront her.
"I could ask you the same question, Ruth,"
he replied, his voice low and measured.
"What are you doing here, and what's going on between you and Eric?"
Ruth's eyes widened in alarm at Nate's directness, a flicker of panic flashing across her features as she realized that her carefully guarded secret was on the brink of being exposed. She struggled to maintain her composure, her words stumbling over each other as she attempted to concoct a plausible explanation. I came to see Eric, Ruth stammered, her voice betraying her nerves as she glanced nervously towards the house. I missed him, Nate. I wanted to make things right. But Nate wasn't buying it. He could see through her facade, the hollow ring of her words echoing in his ears like a warning bell. He knew that Ruth's sudden reappearance was no coincidence, that there was more to her motives than met the eye. Save it, Ruth. Nate's voice was cold and unyielding as he levelled his gaze at her. I know what you've been up to, and Eric deserves better than your lies. As Nate confronted Ruth, his voice carried a stern warning tinged with a hint of desperation. You can't keep doing this, Ruth, he admonished, his gaze unwavering as he met her eyes. Eric doesn't need your empty promises and manipulative games. He needs stability and honesty, things you seem incapable of providing. Ruth bristled at Nate's words, her defences rising like a shield against his accusations. How dare you? She retorted, her voice laced with indignation. Eric is my son too, Nate. I have every right to see him and be a part of his life. But Nate refused to back down, his resolve unwavering in the face of Ruth's protest. Not like this, Ruth, he countered, his tone firm but tinged with sadness. Not when you're only going to hurt him more. Eric deserves better than that, and I won't let you use him as a pawn in your twisted games. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air between them, the weight of their shared history and unresolved conflicts pressing down upon them like a suffocating blanket. Ruth's eyes flashed with defiance, her jaw set in stubborn determination as she squared her shoulders and prepared to argue her case. Eric needs me, Nate, she insisted, her voice trembling with emotion. He needs his mother, and I won't let you stand in the way of that. I'll do whatever it takes to be a part of his life, whether you like it or not. But Nate remained steadfast, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision. I'm sorry, Ruth, he said, his voice filled with regret. But until you can prove that you're capable of putting Eric's needs above your own, I can't allow you to see him. He deserves better than this, and so do you. Ruth's return was born out of a complex web of emotion and circumstances. A tangled tapestry of regret, longing and desperation that had driven her back into Nate and Eric's lives after months of silence and absence. As Nate's words echoed in her mind, Ruth felt a wave of frustration and desperation wash over her, her resolve faltering in the face of his unwavering determination. She knew that her reasons for returning to Nate were far from noble, her motives tainted by the spectre of her failures and shortcomings. With a heavy heart, Ruth revealed the truth to Nate, her voice trembling with emotion as she laid bare the depths of her despair. I had nowhere else to go, Nate, she confessed, her words tinged with shame. My former lover left me. I had debts to pay. I thought maybe if I came back to you, you would help me. But Nate's expression remained impassive, his gaze steady as he listened to her confession. I'm sorry, Ruth, he said, his voice soft but resolute. But I can't be your safety net anymore. Eric and I have moved on, and we can't keep picking up the pieces every time you fall apart. For a moment, Ruth felt as though the ground had been pulled out beneath her feet, her hopes dashed against the rocks of Nate's rejection. She had come back to him in search of refuge and redemption, only to find herself facing the harsh reality of her own mistakes. With a heavy heart, Ruth turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the silence of the night. She knew that her journey was far from over and that the road ahead would be fraught with uncertainty and doubt. But as she disappeared into the darkness, Ruth couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps this was the beginning of a new chapter in life, one in which she would finally have to confront the consequences of her actions and forge a path forward on her own. That night, Nate sat down with Eric, and his heart weighed heavy with the burden of truth he had to share. As he explained the existence of the hidden camera and the revelation of Ruth's clandestine meetings, Eric's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, his young mind struggling to comprehend the complexity of the situation.
"I know it's a lot to take in, buddy,"
Nate said, his voice gentle but tinged with sadness.
"But I needed to know what was going on to protect you."
Eric nodded slowly, his eyes clouded with a mixture of emotions.
"I understand, Dad," he replied,
his voice barely above a whisper.
"But it's still hard to believe."
Nate reached out, placing a comforting hand on Eric's shoulder.
"I know, son,"
he said, his voice filled with empathy.
"But we'll get through this together, I promise."
As Nate recounted his encounter with Ruth and her motives for returning to Eric, his son's shock was palpable. Eric struggled to reconcile the image of the mother he once knew with the reality of her actions, the truth hitting him like a sledgehammer to the chest.